I mean, he did call me a four-eyed coward who probably looks, but why not be a bigger person and rise above it?
Okay, this might be a very controversial review. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about The Good Place. Or more specifically, a chip driver mystery. It's probably my least favorite episode after Patty, but in Patty's defense, that is a good episode. It just feels like it compressed half a season's worth of story into 22 minutes, and it lectured us rather than showed us. And it also showed the girl for the Soul Squad, so you gotta give it that. But back on topic, what can I say about The Good Place? Well, I think The Good Place is obviously a good show, and it's worth all the acclaim. Maybe there is a problem here and there, but it's one of those shows that I really like to rewatch, especially the first season.
Oh, Ariana, we're really in it now.
I love the twist, I love the characters, and I love the messages. It's super relatable, and I am kind of disappointed it only lasted for 4 seasons. But I do get it. The show did feel like it was repeating itself after a while. But I have constantly made it known I think there's no such thing as a perfect product, and every show has that one episode that doesn't click. To me, Chip Driver is that one 4-gig episode. And maybe in its defense, it would be a good episode if it was in any other show. It just had the misfortune of being part of The Good Place. And admittedly, I think it's a bit of a controversial episode, so this might be a controversial review. If you like the episode, fine. This is just my opinion. But what do I dislike so much about Chip Driver? Well, let's discuss. The episode, oddly enough, doesn't begin in the neighborhood, it begins in Janet's Void. If you need to be right up to speed, the Soul Squad's running an experiment to see if human beings can improve. It's in Minnie St. Clair's backyard. Oh, she's one of my favorite characters, she might have been able to save this episode.
What? I don't care. In fact, as soon as I started asking the question, I thought to myself, why are you asking this? You don't care about the answer.
And part of the experiment, Cheetah gave up his memories, which sucks for Eleanor. The bad place tried to sabotage it by sending in a bad Janet and disguising her as good Janet, but she's been caught on because Janet doesn't say, not a girl. But it sucks and she's still at the bad place. But Jason and Michael get her back. Okay, I'm done. So because of this, bad Janet's been kept in Janet's Void, and she has nothing to do. That is, until Michael comes in. He's gonna tell bad Janet a story, and then she'll be free. And he has a book with him, and the story he's about to tell involves said book. And honestly, this should have been the episode, not what follows, because an episode about Michael trying to reform Bad Janet would have been pretty cool. If our Janet can suddenly go from an AI to this, maybe a Bad Janet can do the same thing. Now, in this episode's defense, I think that it does have a good setup. It might be because I do have a weak spot for stories that are framed as stories, except for Steven Universe. The framing device eats up half the episode, but I think they do a pretty good job of it here. And as bad as the episode might get, I think it has a few funny moments.
What's wrong with ombre highlights? Eleanor, please. This week has been hard enough.
And also, again in the episode's defense, the actual episode starts out pretty well. We meet the 4 humans who are all bonding, especially Brent. Yeah, kind of like I mentioned in my previous review, this episode is brought down because of a controversial character. Only, unlike Ronaldo, you're meant to dislike Brent. But what's so bad about Brent? Well, for one, Brent's basically a stuck-up boomer, and he's Brett Kavanaugh, a controversial figure. I'm not even kidding, the creator outright said that was the point. For lack of a better word, Brent's a stuck-up racist asshole.
By the way, I'm the furthest thing from racist. My dentist was a black woman.
And he has no redeeming qualities. And this is a problem, because one thing they never do with Brent is give him any kind of development, beyond using him to rant about somebody they don't like. Kind of like, haha, look at him, this would happen if he got sent to the bad place. I only say it's bad because the point of the show is that anybody can change for the better if given the chance. And if you're able to make terrible characters like Trevor funny, or give some depth to terrible characters like Eleanor's mother, I think you could find a way to somehow redeem Brent. Seriously, they somehow made a woman who abandoned the kid she emotionally abused her whole life sympathetic. I think you could somehow find a way to redeem this guy. Obviously, that never happens. Seriously, whenever it seems like he'll improve, he just takes a whole step back.
Look, this chaos, which is clearly all about me, is a sign. If this is the good place, I belong in the best place.
Even in his final major appearance, where it seems like he'll finally approve, the experiment ends. This episode is about him. Hooray! But the Soul Squad is talking, and Eleanor thinks that despite him being stuck up, he is somewhat improving. All's going well, right? Right? One random day, Brent tells Chini and Simone that he wrote a book. It's called The Scarlet Letter. Actually, I'm wrong, it's a Chip Driver mystery. But as the episode progresses, you will realize Chip Driver is so bad, you'd probably rather read that boring old Scarlet Letter. Now, let me just say something, because I think I have a reason why this doesn't work. Brent wrote a book? Brent? Yeah, obviously it's a terrible fanfic, but Brent Norwalk, a writer? Out of the four humans, he's probably the furthest from being a writer. That's like having an episode of Jason getting a doctorate through MIT through blood, sweat, and tears. See, in my opinion, if Brent wrote a book, or that they at least had an idea for a book, he'd be the kind of character to get bored and give up halfway through. Or since he's a rich boomer, he'd probably get somebody like, say, Chidi or Janet to ghostwrite it for him, and then he'd take all the credit. Now, obviously the book he wrote sucks, but it still feels really weird that this dude of all people wrote a book. It just comes really out of nowhere for the sake of this episode to happen. Yeah, this is the season of time skips, but do you really know how long it takes to write a book? I'm not even saying something like Hunger Games, which obviously went through multiple drafts and edits, but just any book in general. It takes a while. Like, those books you hear about authors who write in like a week, that's super rare. And honestly, most of the time, the shorter it takes to write you something, the worse it could be. Not always, but usually. I feel like maybe if they had a scene of, say, Brent getting inspired to write a book, it might have flowed better. Maybe not in this episode, but they could have done it, like, before in the season. I think it would still be massively out of character, but it wouldn't come to fork out of nowhere like it does here. Especially since, how do you get the book published like we see here? Again, just as he's not the kind of character to write a book, he's probably not the kind of character to know how to self-publish a book.
Why is he in a fighter jet for his author photo?
You would have to ask another resident, or at least Janet, for help. And if he asked Janet, then why didn't she tell the Soul Squad? See, I think they still could have done this, but they shouldn't have had this plot come out of thin air. Remember how Chidi wrote a 3,000-page thesis? Well, what if, say, he randomly mentions it to Brant, or shows it to him, and then Brent's like, oh, I can write something better. And then time skip, and we get this episode. Or maybe because he still thinks there's the best place, he writes a book as a way to get in, since books can't change opinions for the better. Or maybe, say, Eleanor holds a golf day, and that inspires him. Seriously, they should have done more beyond, hey guys, here's a book I wrote. Like, maybe show Chidi the manuscript, and then ask for help in getting it made. Or Eleanor. As you might have guessed, the book is Shirt, since I've been saying that a lot.
Of course, senor, said Louise, who secretly admired Chip more than even his own father.
But Brent doesn't care. He's gonna have a book signing party, and he wants everybody there. The Soul Squad once again meets to discuss this. I know a complaint some people say about this episode is that them obsessing over a book is bad writing on the writer's part.
Tahani has an accent like the Queen of England, but without any of the old gross face parts.
But I think it makes sense. I mean, this is a world where having a Lord of the Rings destination wedding gets you tortured for all eternity. Or just simply being French or from Florida. I mean, a bad fanfic, for all they know, that could be enough to condemn it. And as Tahani says later, the book is full of
such racist, sexist poppycock.
In my opinion, you can learn a lot about somebody just by their writing. The topics they choose, the kind of characters they pick, the themes they write about, how they write, that can tell you a lot about them. It doesn't say a lot that Brent changed as a person if he's still writing about Scarlet Pakistan and Igby the assistant.
Who wears glasses and sweater vests and never does anything spontaneous or cool.
But this is why I propose the idea that, once again, they could have used this to develop Brant more as a character, rather than using him to rant about a politician they don't like. I mean, John is clearly Perez Hilton, yet they found a way to redeem him. Like I said before, one idea could have been to have Brent start writing, or tell everybody he's writing a book, and it's still garbage, but Eleanor tells him to go to Chidi and Simone, since they were college professors. That would be a pretty smart idea, right? Well, what if I told you a problem with this episode is everybody's out of character to some degree. I mean, except Jason and Janet, but that's about it. Like, when the Soul Squad's discussing the humans, Michael says that Simone is...
She tends to make snap judgments about people.
I'm sorry, Simone is prone to making snap judgments?
Next, I suppose you'll want me to go square dancing with Patrick.
A big point about Simone's character is that she's logical and calculated, since she's a neuroscientist. She's quirky, yes, but she's only rash when she thinks her actions have no consequences. And even if some of her decisions might seem questionable, she's still logical about them. That's why in the season 4 premiere she acted the way she did, regardless of how annoying it was.
I'm in a coma and none of this is real.
I'm not gonna lie, she really got on my nerves during those 2 episodes. On a brighter note, once again, this episode is pretty funny at points.
Oh, fun fact, the police sirens in the background are real. I was being chased as I recorded it.
And it does have a pretty nice subplot of Jason getting busted by John. I think one positive about The Good Place is that each episode furthers the plot. It's probably one of the only shows, in my opinion, where you have to watch every episode, and you can't skip anything. Yeah, something like BoJack Horseman, every episode means something, but you could easily skip over episode 2 and nothing would change. Steven Universe, you should watch every episode, especially if you want to get to future, but you can cut out the episodes like Rocknaldo, and nothing would change. The Good Place, even a filler episode like in season 1 furthers the plot. Except here. I'll get to it later, but really, they could have cut out the whole Brent plot, and the whole season would have been the same. But I will say, the whole subplot with John being convinced by Chidi to keep the secret is pretty funny, and it does show that John has grown a lot. My favorite part's probably the two at the book signing. It's a really great scene.
You want to know who wears the same dumb shorts every day?
No, I don't.
It's Dumb Shorts Kathy.
But back to Bad Janet, who thinks she should condemn them all. Yeah, I'm kind of on her side. But Michael says she's judging them too quickly, because they're worth the trouble. But back to the story, where Eleanor tries to appeal to Simone by telling her to forgive Brent. But this is another tank to the episode, since Simone suddenly becomes really preachy. Now, don't get me wrong, everything Simone's saying is right, but like Brent's book, it feels like they're just doing it because. Like, what's next? You're gonna tell me it's wrong to steal? I say this because this isn't how The Good Place is. It feels more like a Saturday morning cartoon than The Good Place. When The Good Place has a political or non-philosophical opinion, they show why they think it's bad or make a joke about it. They don't say, don't harass women, they show Trevor harassing Eleanor. And yeah, maybe it's a little funny, but it's still uncomfortable and we can see why. They even do it this season with Brett and Janet.
Also, frankly, my assistant, Janet, is a little uptight. I mean, she hasn't worn any of my gifts.
I think a reason why there are several bad episodes is because the writers put their political opinions in those episodes. And very rarely do they entertain the other side. The Good Place kind of does that with the committee, but they're not in this episode, obviously. But regardless of what you might think, The Good Place is political per se. Actually, let me rephrase that. They might make political jokes and they obviously have a bias, but they're not so callous about something like this.
When people like him are ignorant jerks, why are people like us asked to forgive him?
Like, it honestly reminds me of this.
I can't believe this country hates women more than it loves guns. No?
Now, yes, obviously stuff like racism and misogyny are bad, but the previous episode showed why they were bad. On top of that, while they do have hate sinks, they still make the hate sinks kind of interesting on their own. I might find somebody like Trevor or Sean or even the committee or Tahani's parents bad, but I still find them interesting on their own.
I'm still waiting on that smile, gorgeous.
Trevor.
Where's that smile?
I think the whole purpose of this speech is to show how far Simone has come, but it feels super forced in for the sake of this message. And this isn't the last time they're gonna do this. The way the scene should have gone was instead of saying this, Simone should have said something like,
Sorry, but no, I can't.
But this whole squad isn't giving up. Michael goes to work with Brent, and he tries to nudge him in the right direction. Obviously it doesn't work, but you gotta give him credit. But they should have done more with this scene beyond having Michael use an aphorism. I mean, the whole season they're keeping Brent in line by telling him there's a best place.
You'll all be evaluated, and then a very small group of the most morally upstanding residents get to go.
So why can't Michael say something like, dude, you know you can't get in the best place if you read a novel? Yeah, maybe Brent wouldn't listen or he'd be stubborn, but even Bad Janet says how stupid an idea it was for Michael to do this.
You thought that ding-dong would do a total personality 180 because of one gentle metaphor?
See, even the writers realize this whole plot's going nowhere. Now, I think another reason why this episode sucks is it feels like one of those episodes where, for it to work, they have to have everybody act like Jason. Like, suddenly Michael forgets they're telling Brent a lie. Or Eleanor doesn't think to go to Brent herself and find some way to get the book signing from happening. Like, argument's sake, maybe she gets Janet to summon a sinkhole where the event's supposed to be. I think the only reason they didn't go for it was because Brent might think the best place is calling to him, but that doesn't mean Eleanor can make up something to cancel the book signing or to get Brent to calm down. Like, Eleanor can't say something like, writers can't get into the best place. Yes, obviously it's a blatant lie, but so is the best place. But finally, the big day comes, and as expected, it doesn't go so well.
Who could have predicted that?
Simone's gonna say it sucks and tear Brent a new asshole, but Eleanor is somehow able to convince her to go easy. Somehow. The ladies obviously lie, but Simone tries to give constructive criticism, and it obviously goes nowhere. Just like Brent's character development. Now, this is where I say they should have had the episode be about Simone and Brent, not Brent and the whole gang. Or maybe do Chidi, Simone, and Brent. Simone's a professor, and a big part about being a professor is reading an essay and giving constructive criticism on said essay. So why not have Brent go to her or Chidi and they try to help him and improve the book? Maybe he wouldn't listen at first, but it'd be a way to redeem his character. But because of these mean women, Brent decides to cancel the book event, and the whole Soul Squad is livid. But how exactly is this bad? I mean, the four humans are still willing to hang out with him, he just wrote a terrible book. I mean, what's next? Is Brent gonna litter? But they do come to a conclusion, and Michael and Eleanor decide the right way to help him is by brutal honesty, which I guess could work. It doesn't seem to work at first, but Brent reluctantly agrees to apologize. But like I said, why not tell him, Brent, well, you did upset Chidi and Simone, and if you don't go and apologize, you won't make it into the best place.
So, no best place?
Oh, so no best place?
Oh, Brent, you big white oaf.
Again, it's so frustrating they forgot this just to have a frustrating episode that honestly doesn't do anything to further Brent's growth. Again, The Good Place is a show that runs in continuity, probably more than BoJack, so having this plot, which doesn't really factor into any other episode, is kind of frustrating. But trust me, this isn't the worst part of the episode. The worst part is when Michael finally gets him to apologize, and of course it's one of those sorry you feel that way type apologies. It leads into a confrontation that escalates until even Tahani's yelling at him.
What?
But wait, Tahani? One, out of character, Tahani isn't the type to yell at people like that. She's more passive-aggressive.
Smile bravely, bury your feelings, and allow a steady drizzle to slowly wash away your sadness over 50 years.
Yeah, honestly, her speech is hilarious, but it's still super out of character just for this one scene. And two, Tahani, you know that you can ultimately doom humanity with this? Like, why are you yelling at him and not being constructive at least? I mean, give Simone this, she was at least trying to be friendly at first. But let me make it clear once again. Chidi, Simone, and Tahani, and basically the whole group aren't wrong with what they're telling him. He kinda deserves it. But what sucks is the execution of all this. I mean, he has a tantrum, but he's getting yelled at. Of course he's gonna throw a tantrum. And also, when he goes on his little rant, why doesn't he mention the best place? Like, already, he's so high and mighty and he's having a fit. Why can't he say something like, well, I can get away with it because I'm going to the best place? But it doesn't stop there, as it gets to the point where Chidi punches Bren after he calls Simone a condescending bench. Ouch. Even Bad Janet says it.
I told you, man. Humans suck.
I mean, I guess it kinda works because Chidi threw the first punch, but we'll just leave it at that. But don't worry, this story has one more chapter. The Soul Squad meets and they all decide to make up ideas to torture Brent. And that's the end of the story. But wait a minute, the story's not done. I mean, John's plot's done, but not Brent's. I mean, he got punched, but that's it. Like, what was the point of all this? I mean, he doesn't learn a lesson. In the next episode, they're suddenly back to liking him. Like, no apology, no nothing. He's just suddenly their friend again. You don't think this wouldn't be enough for, say, Simone to stop talking to him? Or maybe for Chidi to try again to apologize or at least have a heart-to-heart? Yeah, in the next episode they kind of had that, but that should have happened here. Like, Chidi goes to Brent, and while not much changed, they do kind of an understanding. Or if they didn't want to do that, at least show us the payback they gave Brent, not be told, yay, we're gonna give him payback! See, that would have been way more satisfying. But Michael has decided to let Bad Janet go, but she has to take a copy of the manifesto he and Janet wrote.
Great thinking. People that get books as gifts always read them.
But why is he letting her go, you might ask? Because as Michael says,
what matters isn't if people are good or bad. What matters is if they're trying to be better today.
What? That was the point of this episode? The humans are trying to get better? Never was the episode about them trying to get better for the sake of trying to get better. It was about them trying to get an asshole to apologize as to not doom humanity. Seriously, at no point was anybody trying to get better. They were trying not to get Brent to be a stuck-up asshole. Maybe he was making that point with John, but that's it. If he wanted to make that point, you should have made the episode about John, not about Brent. See, Brent wasn't trying to get better, he was trying to show off. Or if Brent thought it was a good deed to get into the best place, why didn't he just tell Michael, or why didn't the writers just say it? Simone wasn't trying to get better, she was just defending her friends. Something she's done before. Chidi, he just lost his temper. The humans are trying to get better.
Then I am terribly overweight. For my height.
Thanks, Jock. But Michael goes on to say he's letting Bad Janet go because that's how he's going to be a little better today. Now look, I have something to say. At the beginning of the review, I mentioned how I dislike the episode Patty because it explains what's wrong with The Good Place over showing us or having the Soul Squad slowly get affected. I mean, they kind of do it with Jason, but you can't have, say, like, Eleanor getting tired of endless shrimp. Still, I think it's a better episode than Ship Driver. For one, the problem presented gets solved by the end. And while the problem is told to you, it isn't shoehorned in. I can honestly see that happening. And also, the messages in this episode, they feel kind of hypocritical. The big point of the show is, well, Jen explains it.
You're supposed to do good things. Because you're good. Not because you're seeking moral desert.
I mean, bragging about her good deeds is what got Tahani sent to be tortured forever. So, to me, Michael giving a speech like this kind of negates what he's doing. Since you can make the argument Michael's saying, I'm better than Brent, not, I'm trying to do the right thing. If he said something like, I'm letting you go because it's the right thing to do, it would have been way more fulfilling. But not this. Although, I will say this, the episode does end on a hilarious note. And that was a Chip Driver mystery. Like I said, if it aired in any other show, it would just be an average episode. But because it's part of The Good Place, it kind of falls flat. The episode is filler in the worst way, nothing gets resolved, and it has a lot of shoehorned messages and themes. Everybody's suddenly stupid, and some people are out of character. And it's a waste of another good character. Now, if you like Trip Driver, fine. That's okay. But to me, it's my least favorite episode of The Good Place. But what do you think of this episode? Is it the worst Good Place episode, or is there something worse? What other topic should I touch on? Also, don't forget to follow me on Patreon. Link is down below. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm Kitty Monk, and thank you for watching.